Boise State's athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, he actually liked the tweet where I posted the link in the graphic for that episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode on the College Underdogs YouTube channel. I'm your host, Trey Smith. Today, we're going to look at a mailbag question I received, and then we're going to talk about the PAC-2. What are their options? I've got 4 options that they have at this point. There's 4 ways this can go. We're going to look at all 4 of them. We're going to look at how other conferences might be impacted by certain options, and a current Mountain West athletic director liked a tweet that I shared last week of my episode talking about a best of the rest conference. So that's what we're going to get into. Before I do, you know what to do. Like, subscribe. Please like the video. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We cover the underdog conferences, the underdogs of college football. If you're a fan of college football underdogs, this is your place to be. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. Watch it to the end. Comment, share it with a friend, and let's just keep the discussion going. That's what we are here. This is a college football online community discussion thread, forum, video, YouTube channel, all in one. So let's get to this. So my mailbag question comes from Tyler Nelson. Shout out Tyler. He's a pretty consistent viewer, watcher of the channel, and supporter. I appreciate you, Tyler, especially your input you bring. But as you see here on the screen, he said, Trey, I got a question for you. Do you think the conferences will pass 20 schools, maybe up to 24 schools? Do you think that 24 schools in a conference is too many schools? And here's my response to this. At this point, anything I think would never happen has happened. Things I think were sure to happen didn't happen. So at this point, I'm not going to rule anything in or out. I think if the SEC and Big Ten feel like the right schools are coming available for them to enhance their conference, enhance their brand, get more playoff representation, whatever you want to call it, and it means them getting to 20 schools or even 24 schools, I'm not ready to sit here and take that off the table. I never thought we'd see the Pac-12 implode like it did, but it did. I never thought we'd see Oregon State and Washington State left out without a home, but we did. So at this point, I can't sit here and confidently say, no, we'll never see a 20-team or a 24-team conference. Nah. I do think if we see the Big Ten and SEC in particular getting to that many schools per conference, I mean, now we're looking at 40 to 48 schools just in those 2. I mean, that's when we really got to look at this whole separation thing. Like, do we just want to have a power 2 do their thing and everyone else is playing for something else? Y'all know me. I am not a fan and an advocate for that. But if we start seeing the top of the top adding that many schools, now where the SEC, I feel like, has been pretty clear with their expansion, they're going to stay geographically sound. The Big Ten does not put the same premium on that. Neither does the ACC. But with the ACC kind of being the next target for expansion, you know, I know there's been some smoke with, well, we know Clemson and Florida State are just trying their hardest to get out of the ACC. Now, would the SEC be their landing spot? I don't know. But I think that would still put the SEC at 18 schools anyway, so they'd still be under 20. But to answer your question, Tyler, I think anything's possible at this point. I think we need to watch the ACC and just kind of see how things shake there. But we could be done with realignment, expansion talk for a little while, with the exception of the PAC-2 conference, which is what I'm getting ready to talk about now. But before I move on, you guys let me know, and gals, let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts? What are the pros and cons to 20 and 24 team conferences? Where do you think the landscape is shifting to? What is your answer to that question that I just answered? All right. options for the PAC-2 conference. So I've got 4 options here. All right. And I mentioned at the top of the show about there was an AD. I'll tell you who it was. I'll even show you the like and all that. Not that it means anything. I just found it interesting. I almost didn't even catch it at first. And then I saw it and I thought, wait a minute, isn't that? So we'll get to that. I'm going to give you what I think the 4 options are. And then I'm going to tell you which one I think is the most likely and why. And then I want to know your thoughts on this. And is there an option here that I have completely left out? So we've got Washington State. We've got Oregon State. Right now they have sort of a scheduling alliance with the Mountain West, I believe, for the next 2 seasons. They have the money from the exiting members. They've got a little bit of a nest egg that can hold them over and could potentially be used for expansion if that's the direction they choose to go. But let's look at what are the 4 options Oregon State, Washington State, aka the PAC-2 have. Number 1 is obvious, and I'm going to do it in the order that I think fan bases of those 2 institutions would like to see this happen in. And number 1 is that they get a Power 4 invite. I was very confident last fall that the Big 12 was going to come back into the fold for Oregon State and Washington State. That did not happen. I think at this point, any expansion targets on the Big 12's radar are on the other coast. I could be wrong, but just all the rumblings I feel like that we hear right now, I think they're on the other coast. Again, the private equity investment, that could be used towards expansion. So maybe it brings Oregon State and Washington State back into the fold. But I feel like for the Big 12, and you're feel free to disagree with me, but I don't see that happening at this point. Now, last fall, I was super confident that it would happen, and it didn't happen. Now that I feel like I have no confidence that it will happen, maybe that'll be what triggers it. Who knows? But I do think that the Big 12's expansion targets right now are set on the other coast, probably waiting to see what happens with the ACC. However, the ACC would be the other conference that could invite Oregon State and Washington State. And I'm not going to dive into all the factors. I guess the dominoes that would need to fall for that to even become a real discussion would be for the ACC to lose Florida State and Clemson and not lose anybody else. Some are of the mind that if Clemson and Florida State are able to find a way out, there will be maybe a floodgate of other institutions that would make their way out. Some are of the mind that, okay, if Florida State and Clemson find a way to get out, it's going to be very expensive, and not every other institution in the ACC is going to want to follow suit. I don't really know what's going to happen there with the ACC. I mean, I brought up that discussion earlier this week. You're welcome to go watch that video. I think that ground is more unstable than what it's been, mainly due to the look-in that is due in February 2025. But I think what will impact that look-in is what happens with Florida State and Clemson. I don't want to rehash that whole conversation, but we could potentially see a world where the ACC wants to strengthen that West Coast arm and bring in Oregon State and Washington State. How likely is a Power 4 invite for either of those 2 teams at this point? I don't know that it's fair to put a 1 through 10 confidence meter number on it, because there's still some dominoes I feel like that would need to fall to get that to happen. But here's where I'm at. If it ain't happened at this point, I don't know that that's going to happen anytime soon, at least. And I know that sucks. And I know that's not particularly what Washington State and Oregon State fans want to hear. But man, as I just sit and watch, I don't know. But if you're going to get one between the Big 12 or the ACC, my lean would be you're more likely to get one from the ACC, but we need to pay attention what happens there. So Power 4 invite is obviously option number 1. Option number 2 is they rebuild their conference and sort of create, as I talked about last week, this best of the rest conference. Remember last week, I reacted to the article about the former Colorado State AD who was talking about what a best of the rest conference could potentially look like. And here's what's interesting about that. I'm going to show you here on the screen. Boise State's athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, he actually liked the tweet where I posted the link in the graphic for that episode. So, and this was before Twitter hid everyone's likes even. So he did that when it was public. I don't, probably nothing. I don't know what to make of that, but I did find it interesting that Boise State's AD liked that tweet that was promoting this best of the rest conference conversation. Here's my thoughts on this. Because if you're going to build a best of the rest conference, you're going to look to poach from the American. And I think some teams in the American, even though this is probably debatable, you could sit here and kick around whoever you want. I do think Tulane, USF, Memphis, and UTSA would be in this best of the rest conference conversation. Here's my question, though. Does it make sense for either of those schools to make this type of leap? Now, this is kind of a similar conversation to what we were having a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago, maybe 6-7 months ago. But does it make sense for these 4 teams in the Southeast, essentially, to join a West Coast heavy conference that's not even considered a power conference? Because no matter how you build it, the teams you're going to rebuild this PAC-2 with aren't going to equate to a power conference. It's just going to be a premier G5 conference. So is it worth the exit fee money for programs like Tulane, Memphis, USF, and UTSA, or whoever you want to throw into that mix, to pay an exit fee that what we've seen to this point is, 17 to 18 million with the notice that was given by UCF, Houston, Cincy, and then UConn? Don't know yet what SMU's exit fee is looking like. I would imagine it would be more because it was less of a notice. But I'm just saying, if is it worth paying that exit fee, leaving the $1 billion media deal that your conference currently has, to go join a conference that's still considered mid-major? Now, it would be a premier competitive mid-major conference, and it could probably command a good deal, I think. But again, that's questions that are unanswered at this point. Right now, all the PAC has is this sub-licensing agreement. At least that's my understanding of what it is with the CW. And then they've got their alliance or scheduling agreement arrangement with the Mountain West. So are they going to be able to poach who they want from the Mountain West and then poach who they want from the American and build this conference out? Because you got to think a lot of the resources that are currently sitting on financially, those are going to be used to sustain them over the next couple years, next season or two. So I just am having a difficult time making sense of teams like Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, and USF making a move like this, just to join a rebuilt PAC, when at this point the PAC they're not going to get the autonomy status back. They're not going to get that power conference status back. And, I know last year I was making an argument because some of you have been listening. Last summer, probably around August, I was lobbying and advocating and reporting even on the potential move of the PAC-4 when it was still all 4, Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford, sort of reverse merging into the American Conference. And I know a lot of people weren't like, this doesn't make any sense, how that would travel and geographically and yada, yada, yada. And I understood that. The difference was at that point in time was that the PAC had nothing. They were a depleted conference with no media deal whatsoever at that point in time. The American Conference has a $1 billion media deal, okay? Their payouts right now per school were near double what the Mountain West was paying out. And so I was just simply making an argument that if Oresco went back to ESPN and said, hey, if we can bring these guys in, what could we up our payouts to? And then on top of that, you have the exit fee money that you could also use to sweeten the pot. And then on top of that, it was a way for ESPN to get these teams in cheaper than what they would have to pay the ACC. But then, as we all know, the ACC came back into the fold. And here we are, right? SMU ended up leaving. Cal, Stanford ended up in the ACC, yada, yada, yada. The only reason why I bring that up is because it could sound like I'm contradicting myself by saying that it wouldn't make sense for 4 AAC teams to join this rebuilt PAC conference, when last year I was making a case for 4 West Coast teams to join this, G5 American Athletic Conference. Also, at that point in time, the PAC had not lost its Power 5 status, its autonomy status. And so had you structured the merger the correct way, you could have potentially kept that status having those teams. So anyways, I'm not trying to rehash last year. I'm just trying to help you understand how the situations are way different this time around. And I am just really struggling to make sense of Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, and USF financially, geographically, making a move like this, particularly to a conference that's just going to be considered another mid-major, another G, whatever. Maybe it'll be the G6 at that point. I don't know. But y'all let me know your thoughts. Am I missing something here on this best of the rest conference? If you're a Memphis fan, Tulane fan, USF fan, or UTSA fan, would you want that move for your school? Or any other team in the American that maybe be considered for something like this that I'm not mentioning? It just doesn't make sense to me. And then the third option that the PAC-2 has, which I believe this is the most likely at this juncture, is that they merge with the Mountain West. And it just is a full-blown merger. Now, I did talk a couple of days ago about how if somehow in some world things would shake where Stanford and Cal ended up back with the Pac-4. I wasn't predicting that to happen. I was just saying, if this ACC thing implodes, that could be a consequence of an ACC implosion. It would rule out a full merger with the Mountain West. However, if the ACC stays together, I think this is the most likely option, is you see Oregon State, Washington State merge with the Mountain West. I'm pretty sure 2026 is when the Mountain West is up for a new media deal, and they could command a media deal that's in the same ballpark as the American Conference, I would think. Maybe they land another, a $12-year, $1 billion deal, and they're able to pay their teams out more. Now, again, that doesn't help Oregon State, Washington State, considering where they were. But as far as the Mountain West Conference perspective, and maybe they could do something bigger than that, better than that. I don't know. Keep in mind, the American was able to negotiate that deal when they still had UCF, Houston, and Cincy. And so I think the Mountain West would potentially, maybe, be able to command something like that in the market. But I don't know. But I do think a merger with the Mountain West at this point seems to be the most likely. I know a lot of you Oregon State fans and Washington State fans, you're just ready for this to be over. Like, let's just get on with it. Let's let everybody find their landing spot so everyone can breathe and either be upset and disappointed and then move on knowing this is where we're at, or, be very excited that a Power 5 team or Power 4 team came in at the 11th hour and now we're fired up because we're back in the game. And then my fourth and final scenario here would be bringing back this conversation of relegation. And if you remember, that was kicked around last fall. We talked about it on this channel, that there was a presentation that involved a form of relegation in college football between the Mountain West and the PAC. And it actually involved some other, I think, G5 conferences as well. But somehow having some sort of relegation structure where there's a promotion-demotion dynamic at play. I don't know if we're there yet in college football. I don't know. It just seems like there's too much shaky ground and not enough stability in general to really be able to implement a system like that and for it to be efficient, effective, and sustainable. But That's it. Those are my 4. Join a Power 4. Best of the rest conference. Merge with the Mountain West. Some system of relegation. You let me know what you think is most likely. Let me know if you think I left something out. Love to hear your input and feedback in the comments. And as always, until next time, that's it for me, Trey Smith, College Underdogs.